It was a cold January morning when the events unfolded. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of pancakes. I was sitting at the table, reading the newspaper, enjoying the calm routine of our mornings. Across from me, Rachel was humming softly as she flipped through her phone, her eyes not meeting mine. We had been married for 7 years, and for the most part, things were good. At least, that's what I thought. I had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. We had our occasional disagreements, but we had always worked through them, our connection unbroken. Or so I believed. Rachel set down her phone and looked at me, her expression strangely distant. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice unusually quiet. I glanced up from my paper, sensing something off. "What is it?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but there was an edge of concern in my voice. She took a deep breath, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her coffee mug. "I've been seeing someone else," she said, her words tumbling out almost casually. "I've been sleeping with my boss." I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I could feel my pulse racing, my chest tightening. My brain struggled to process what she had just said, and for a moment, I thought I had misheard her. I looked up at her face, but there was no trace of guilt, no sign of distress, just an eerie calmness, as though she was discussing the weather. I let the silence hang in the air, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of my thoughts. You've been sleeping with him? How long?" I managed to croak, my voice a mix of disbelief and rising anger. "About 6 months," she replied, her tone flat. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but it did. I thought I could handle it, but I can't keep hiding it from you anymore. 6 months. The words replayed in my head, like a broken record. 6 months, and she had been lying to me, living a double life. I felt the overwhelming weight of betrayal crash over me, and something inside me snapped. All the trust, all the years of companionship had been shattered in an instant. The woman I had loved, the one I thought I knew, was now a stranger sitting across from me. My hands clenched into fists. "How could you do this to me?" I hissed, my voice shaking with rage. "How could you betray me like this? After everything we've built together?" Rachel's eyes seemed to flicker with a hint of guilt, but it was quickly masked by a defensive coldness. "I'm sorry," she said, but her apology felt hollow. "It's not about you. It's about me. I've been feeling unfulfilled, I guess. I didn't know how to deal with it. Unfulfilled?" I repeated, incredulous. "Unfulfilled? You don't cheat on your husband because you're unfulfilled, Rachel. You talk about it. You communicate. But you—" My voice cracked and I stood up, pushing my chair back so hard that it clattered to the floor. "You went behind my back. You destroyed everything we had. For what? A fling with your boss." Rachel didn't answer. She just stared at me, her face pale, the faintest trace of tears welling up in her eyes. But it was too little, too late. The damage had already been done. There was no coming back from this. I felt a surge of anger and hurt that I couldn't control. "I can't even look at you right now," I spat, my words bitter. "Get out. Just get out of this house." Rachel didn't argue. She stood up slowly, grabbing her bag from the chair. Her movements were mechanical, like she was going through the motions of something she had already mentally checked out of. She paused by the door, her back turned to me, and for a brief moment, I thought she might say something, anything to explain or beg for forgiveness. But she didn't. She just left. I stood there, alone in the kitchen, the weight of her confession hanging in the air. The calm morning I had expected had turned into a nightmare. My mind was racing, but all I could hear was the echo of her words. "I've been sleeping with my boss." And in that moment, I realized that everything I thought I knew about her, about us, had been a lie. The woman I married was gone, and I was left reeling, with nothing but the broken pieces of my heart to pick up. The house felt empty in a way I'd never known before. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, frozen, as the morning sunlight filtered in through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. The sound of the ticking clock was maddening, a reminder of how time had been forever altered in a matter of seconds. I couldn't understand how it had come to this. How had everything seemed so normal? Had she been lying to me all this time, even when we were laughing together, sharing dinners, planning vacations? Every memory now felt tainted, as though I had been blind to the truth. I reached for my phone, dialing Rachel's number, but it went straight to voicemail. I wasn't even sure what I was hoping for. Answers, perhaps, or maybe a chance to tell her off more, to scream at her and make her feel the gravity of what she had done. But the voicemail box greeted me with its sterile tone, and I just hung up, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I wandered aimlessly around the house, opening and closing drawers, pacing through rooms that suddenly felt foreign to me. The walls that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed to mock me with their silence. The very air in the house felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of her betrayal. The sound of the front door opening broke the silence. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly turned to see Rachel standing there, her eyes red from crying, but her expression still uncertain. She had come back. "I can't leave like this," she said, her voice trembling, but there was no anger left in it, only a quiet desperation. "I know I've hurt you, but we need to talk about this. Please." I stared at her, feeling nothing but cold emptiness. There was no anger left, just a hollow ache deep inside me. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her rationalizations, her apologies that meant nothing now. But she wasn't leaving. I could see that. "What's left to talk about, Rachel?" I asked, my voice low, devoid of emotion. "You've already told me everything I need to know. You slept with your boss. You betrayed me. You threw everything away for what? A temporary escape? Was I not enough for you?" Her eyes welled up with tears again, and she took a tentative step forward. "It wasn't about you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't know how I lost myself. I didn't want to hurt you, but I did. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back." "You can't," I said simply, the words cutting through the air like a knife. "You can't undo what you did, and I can't go back to the way things were. The trust is gone, Rachel. You broke it, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." Her face crumpled, and she sank down onto the couch, her hands shaking. "Please," she pleaded, "I'm begging you. I love you. I made a huge mistake, and I hate myself for it. But I want to fix this. I want to try. I'll do anything." I stared at her, struggling to suppress the bitterness rising in my throat. I didn't know if it was possible to forgive her. Part of me wanted to. We had shared so much, built so much together. But another part of me, the part that had been wounded so deeply, recoiled at the thought of letting her back in, even for a moment. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore," I said, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. "And I don't know if I want to." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I couldn't give her the reassurance she was asking for. Not yet. Not after everything that had happened. My mind raced with questions, with anger, with hurt, but I couldn't make sense of it. All I knew was that I felt lost, betrayed in a way I didn't know how to recover from. Maybe we should take some time apart," I said, my voice distant. "I need space to think, to process all of this. I need to figure out if I even want this to work anymore." Rachel nodded, wiping her eyes. She didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. She slowly stood up, and with a final glance toward me, she walked out the door, leaving me alone in the quiet of the house once again. This time, the emptiness felt even worse. It wasn't just the silence of a house without her. It was the silence of a relationship that might be beyond repair. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched coffee cup Rachel had left behind. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The world outside the window seemed unchanged, unaffected by the storm inside me. But inside, I was anything but calm. I was breaking, trying to piece together something that might never be whole again. The woman I thought I knew was gone, and the man I was becoming in her absence. I wasn't sure I liked him,